Will full employment be a reality in South Africa?
Unemployment is regarded as the most pressing policy challenge that the government and the economy as a whole is faced with.
The unemployment rate is expected to trend around 21% in 2020. The observed trends are an indication that these objectives are not feasible. This is true unless the economy improves substantially. The economic recession in 2008 resulted in 1 million jobs being lost. South Africa is still in a recovery period and job creation is at a low. Unemployment rate and employed have both worsened when comparing 2015 and 2016 statistics. The unemployment rate increased by 1.6%. Labor regulations and unions play a large part in job creation. They are vital in protecting the rights of workers, but the problem arises when they inadvertently raise costs attributed to wage rates. So rather than employing people in mass, firms rather hire fewer employees. Low levels of educational attainment create the situation where most people, especially the youth, are not equipped to enter the job market, hence the high youth unemployment rate. To combat unemployment, a tool that is used is to give subsidy to matriculants to assist in job creation. It will not only help in creating jobs, but also incentivize firms who are willing to employ young employees. One of the aims of the NDP is to increase the proportion of working adults from 41% to 61% in 2030. The problem with this is that jobs are not being created fast enough to foster the intake of working population. As shown on the graph, as the labor force increases, the population also increases at almost the same rate. The fall in commodity prices has led to a sharp decline in employment in key sectors of the economy. South Africa can remedy this problem by increasing the rate at which low-skilled jobs are created, as we have a large number of people who are semi-skilled. South Africa can also have a more open immigration approach policy, as this will not only be beneficial to the labor force, but competition in highly skilled industries may help to improve national output. Agricultural activities in rural areas have limited assets, and the population mostly does not fall in the wage tax bracket, which can be taxed. As a result, the tax base is very limited. Rural areas have difficulty in financing their own development programs. This increases the dependency on the grant system as well as government interventions and involvement. The ability for the adult working population in rural areas to increase is highly dependent on the shift from informal to formal sectors due to the decline in agricultural sector. The macroeconomics reform may come in the form of decreased tax rates, coupons, and grant system viability. Ultimately, if living conditions are reduced, the push factor to rely on informal jobs could decrease, but the will to find a more constant formal job is presented as a more viable option. The labor force participation rate for the year 2016 has been declining. Frustration due to the inability to find jobs discourages workers and leads to an exit from the labor force. This decline is depicted in the graph below. The decline can be partly attributed to poor absorption of new entrants into the market. Poor absorption indicates the scarcity of jobs in the labor market. Lengthy periods of job search can lead to frustration amongst job seekers and can consequently discourage job seekers, which can lead to them exiting the labor force altogether. Possible actions to improve the labor force participation rate are participation by the private sector in creating internships and apprenticeships and creating tax incentives for firms hiring youth. In order to achieve this NDP goal, an average annual yearly growth of 5.4% is required. This rate of growth represents the necessary level of growth in order to achieve the unemployment objective in the NDP of reducing unemployment to 6% by the year 2030. South Africa only averaged yearly growth of 2.9% between 1995 and 2015. Due to very weak growth between 2011 and 2015, South Africa would now need to grow by 6.38% to meet the objective. As depicted on the graph, GDP growth has been declining over the past 5 years. Ways to solve the problem include increasing the rate of savings, reducing the cost of doing business, lowering the cost of living in order to increase disposable income, and remove tariff and non-tariff barriers to trade. The graph below illustrates the proportion of income that has been shared by the bottom 40% since 1995. This income has always been less than 10% for more than 20 years. As one of the objectives, the NDP introduces minimum wages as one of the tools that can help reduce income inequality. It is feasible to increase the income proportion shared by the bottom 40% to be more than 10% in 2030. Despite South Africa's potential to do better in the export sector, the objective is not feasible. When analyzing South Africa's export performance, it is shown that the performance has been disappointing. Reasons why the objective is not feasible is that there are few large-scale exporters in South Africa. which results in the burden of producing and exporting relying on limited firms. South Africa is also made up by the service sector, minerals, and non minerals, but these sectors are underperforming. Recommendations include South Africa investing in STEM to open more doors for improvement in the manufacturing sector. For the country to be a world class exporter and connect to the rest of the world, access should be possible, so there is a need for an effective and efficient transport infrastructure to assist rapid growth. Export growth. Gross national savings for South Africa was 14.9% in the year 2014 and increased to 15.1% in the year 2015, putting South Africa at 109th in the world. A lack of financial literacy, unemployment, and consumerism are some features that are hampering significant progress and increasing gross national savings as a percentage of GDP. And based on the forecasted gross national savings for the years 2016 and beyond, it is expected to decline to 15.08% by the year 2021. It is recommended that South Africans save more, as this would result in the country relying less on borrowing funds. It is also recommended that university financial literacy programs be run in order to deal with the lack of financial literacy. The country witnessed its highest growth in gross fixed capital formation of 23.5% in 2008. It then declined to 20.5% after 2008 and remained constant until 2014. Public sector fixed investment is expected to decrease in 2016 due to higher risk premiums, and with South Africa's slow moving economic performance, the objective is not feasible. South Africa should secure a stable growth rate in gross fixed capital formation and public sector fixed investment, as this will lead to domestic companies expanding and as a result, more jobs will be created. An increase in public sector fixed investment will also increase the country's productivity and international competitiveness. As shown in the graph, public employment has not reached its targeted goals and has fell short. The reason for this is the gap between current outcomes and achieving target of expanded public employment programs is due to the government's lack of resources and budgetary allocation. From our results, the objective of increased employment through expanding public employment programs is not feasible. Recommendations going forward include expanding existing public employment programs to public works programs and community-based programs which could help in creating more opportunities, mostly in the social sector. The government should also ensure efficiency in its capacity to allocate funds to public programs to generate more employment opportunities. In this scenario projection of the economy and employment in South Africa, we located South Africa to be in the third quadrant where we have an inefficient state and a discouraged society which is not engaged. The reasons for this is that the objectives identified in the NDP are not feasible. In order to achieve the mentioned objectives and the successful implementation of the NDP as a whole, careful analysis and understanding of the hindrances is required. The economy and employment should also not be isolated, as everything such as rural development, fighting corruption, improving education, training, and innovation are interlinked.